more everything in reality
man.
feels like a giant mech, the happier I am with having to do day-to-day things like run errands.
It's the end of the year, and we've already talked about award shows.
Sure.
But I was thinking about this, playing Walking Dead, which I'm quite enjoying, and it did win at the VGAs. But it was more that I think that this is a game, whether you like it or not, it's risen to such acclaim in the style of game that it is, and the way in which we purchased the game, at least originally, which was a digital download, which is kind of redundant, will make it a fairly significant game that we'll be talking about for what it did in the industry. And I was trying to figure out what else this year will be talked about for good or ill 5-10 years down the line as some kind of signature moment in gaming history.
The first thing that pops into my head immediately is Mark of the Ninja.
Really?
Mark of the Ninja, because I think Mark of the Ninja, number one, it is that downloadable, that cheap downloadable, and I think this year is a real kind of tipping point for that.
That I agree. Yeah.
So I think people are going to think like, wow, this is the year that I bought just as much stuff for $15 online and loved it just as much as a retail game. But also I think Mark of the Ninja is going to be talked about a lot in terms of its design by people who are into game design or maybe studying it, because it was an absolutely brilliant way to make stealth accessible to everyone without dumbing it down for people who love stealth. And just everything in the game felt just perfectly tweaked and designed. Like there was nothing off. There was no part of it that didn't feel good, I thought it was a great game.
That would not strike me as I'm not saying it's good or bad or anything. I actually haven't played it, but I think that it doesn't strike me as one that really sticks out. I'm definitely with you on downloads. And definitely with The Walking Dead in the sense that it's not only was it a downloadable title, it's the fact that it was a downloadable episodic series.
An adventure title that was light on what is traditionally considered gameplay.
That's crazy.
And no one seemed to, on the whole, no one really seemed to, think that was a problem. I mean, we were talking about that last week.
This is definitely a big year for downloadable stuff.
Yeah.
I think that Journey is probably the game that if I had to pinpoint one game this year that's really like the one that everyone's they're gonna be like, what came out in old 2012? And it's gonna be like, well, Journey was it was a 3-hour art game that cost like $15.
Well, also remember,
and it did really well.
It was the most brilliant co-op functionality that I have seen maybe ever.
Obviously clicked with a lot of people because the soundtrack won a Grammy, which is sort of not a thing you hear about.
It was so
video
beautiful
games
too.
doing so
His
much.
stuff, Austin Wintory's stuff is like amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
So what else this year came out that was like a thing that in 5 years we'll still talk about?
Here's why this is a tough question: is because you want to immediately say,
"Can you see the future? What do you see in the future?"
Well, you immediately want to talk about what was popular and what was hyped up, but we know that that's not necessarily what people are going to be talking about 5 years from now. A lot of stuff is like.
Let's look in the past. Okay, around this time, at the very end of last generation, Half-Life 2. That is still something that resonates. I think a lot of the gameplay design, just a lot of that stuff is still kind of present now. I'm trying to think of anything else from that era. I don't think Doom 3 really kind of kept stride.
No. I would like to think that people are going to be talking about Dishonored a few years from now.
You think so?
I think it's become a strong franchise. So I mean,
definitely with you on that.
But similar to Mark of the Ninja, it did solve many problems. I think that the stealth issue, the sense of variety. I mean, Splinter Cell. What was it? What was the last one? Conviction. These subtitles are so arbitrary. They managed to just let's go back to numbers.
I just want somebody to just be like, just do one that's just like colon and then just literally say adjective.
Yep.
And see if anybody notices. See if it affects the sales at all.
That needs to stop. This is a topic for another day, but that needs to just stop. Use a number, just a number.
But I think it did. It solved a lot of stealth problems, but also it was very brave in its visual design and its world for the genre.
That is true. Yeah.
One of the coolest things I saw this year was the presentation they gave. Not revealing it, but just giving a closer look at it and being like, here's what we're doing. We have the opportunity to make a brand new IP, and we are not going to do an IP that looks like something else. And they were like, why have it be on Earth? That's boring. We live on Earth. That's stupid.
Yeah.
And I think that the thing they wanted was steampunk without brass.
Yeah.
And they were like, we have some magic powers in there, and they're magic, but this isn't like a swords and sorcery kind of thing. This is it's otherworldly, you know.
And evil whales.
Yeah.
When you slowly realize that these whales are not whales that we know with the friendly baleen and the plankton eating. No, apparently they have tentacles coming out of their mouth and teeth.
That's gross.
Yeah, and it's just like the way that it just hints at it. But back to your point, it was a new IP, and a lot has been made about the fact that usually late in the cycle you don't have new IPs. It's too risky. You know, you just kind of wind down what you have. They did it, and while we don't have the raw numbers, it sounds like it did well enough that they're very, very happy with it. And for that reason, it may really be kind of a game changer. Oh, I hate that word. I said it out loud.
Oh, it's changed the game.
You got a drink. You said game changer. You got a drink.
It might make other publishers feel a little bit more confident about kind of straying from the norm. But then again, Bethesda seems to get away with this because they can make a game like Skyrim and no one else will. Okay, the game that I think will be a point of discussion for both good and bad reasons is Mass Effect 3 or the Mass Effect series.
We have to talk about Mass Effect.
Oh, boy.
I think the story of how they capitulated to an angry, loud fan base about the end of the story was so kind of shocking that it raises issues of community. We're seeing the same thing happening now in the outrage over the box art for BioShock Infinite, which
is like
last I checked has no material effect upon the content of the game, or maybe I don't know.
We need to be taking notes and just writing these down for future discussions, but
I think we can record these things, so we should do that.
We should probably do that, yeah. But no, I
some sort of equipment.
Mass Effect is one of those things. The outcome of that and like the whole issue of like artistic vision versus fan service. Yeah, I think it's an amazing thing to discuss, but it's an amazing thing to discuss in the same way that like war in the Middle East is an amazing thing to discuss. And in the end, you just are like, why?
Why is this a thing?
I liked Mass Effect 3 when I played it, and I don't ever want to think about it again. I'm angry at an entire universe because of how the fans reacted. And like, I don't know what to say. Like, I gave it a chance and I got into it, and now it's just like, sorry, no, you know, I'm sick of that. Like too much.
No. I mean,
you know, that's.
And I mean, I had the same kind of reaction. It was just like this. No, how can you do that? I was a huge fan of the ending as it was, and I think, as I've said before, I never thought it was something to dislike. It just didn't occur to me.
Even if you're not a fan of the ending, there's something to be said for, like, you can hate an ending and it can still be a good ending. The same way you can hate a character and it can still be a good character. Like, I don't understand why people couldn't figure out that it was just a really good, an appropriate ending for the story and be okay with that.
Because
and then why, as a team of writers, you can just look at it and go like,
well, I mean,
oh, okay, here we go.
Well, no, I mean, I think what it hits to is, you know, games really survive on community and that base, but it cuts both ways. It's that if you give them that sense that they have that much ownership in the product, then people are going to start to expect something at the other end. I mean, I think people should just buy EA stock instead, because that gives you a little bit more of a voice. But no, I mean, it is this kind of emotional stock, I think, that people have.
I think this, wow, I think that's, you know, if you really want to look at the big things that happened in gaming in 2012, I don't think most of them were games. I think most of them were big shitstorms and big controversies.
Yes. Sure.
The sexism thing, the Mass Effect thing, the 38 Studios thing with Kingdoms of Amalur.
The thing.
Right. Yeah.
No, I mean the game industry got itself in the news a lot this year.
If we're talking about games that made a splash, I think Far Cry 3 is an interesting one because that came in so late that it missed all the awards and stuff. But I'm seeing that blow up on my Twitter feed. People are finding that. You came in this morning and you said, I'm hooked. I love Far Cry 3. And it's a game that has, and this is not Far Cry 3. This is like the fourth or fifth Far Cry. There were like all these weird spin-offs.
There was like the Xbox version. Yeah. Where you had powers.
You had powers. You had like savage hunter skills, and then the second one, which was like, what's fun? Fixing cars and malaria. And then this one's like, you know what? Let's completely scrap all of that and just start fresh. And it was a new story, and it's a new IP.
And I don't know if this is going to catch on, but the way that the series does not have any narrative coherence, but what Far Cry does indicate one thing. large open space for a shooter.
Exactly.
And I kind of like that idea of branding, that you're not trying to strain a narrative past its point of usefulness.
No, exactly.
But it does indicate, like, you're going to have this particular type of fun, and you can be reliant upon that because it's called Far Cry.
You know, compare that to something like Assassin's Creed 3, which is so bloated and bogged down with lore, and it still holds your hand through mechanics.
This is something that we talked about before, where it's like, as long as you give me recognizable elements stylistically and gameplay-wise, you can call it a sequel.
Yeah.
I don't need the same exact dude in the same exact hood every time.
Here's an interesting idea. What if BioWare made a game that followed the example of The Walking Dead, and the installments were cheaper, downloadable, and I mean, what if their DLC added up to a full game, as opposed to making a full game that you stack bits on top?
I think that's a viable future. I think it's more cost effective. You take a lot more risk in your initial investment in it. You know, the player also takes a lot more risk because you're paying at a much lower, you know, and I would be surprised if a lot of the major publishers aren't considering that. I mean, we're going to need physical media for a little bit because you have to kind of wean people off of it.
Yeah, we can always, I mean, think of it like a TV show or a comic book.
That would be so amazing.
You release a season set or a trade paperback.
Because you only keep it going for as long as the interest is there.
I think part of the problem is...
And you get it out faster.
Remember back when everyone thought the future was episodic games? And there was like, I think there was like a side-scrolling Duke Nukem was a big one.
Oh yeah.
And it just didn't catch on. I think
Manhattan Project.
Buying games in a digital manner was not something people were accustomed to. And it kind of, once again, it gave people the sense that there's something low rent about it. Hence why I think Walking Dead, it's like the level of quality it has, I mean, you know, arguable as it may be for some people, but it's denoting quality in the space that has always seemed like kind of like second rate or an almost ran.
Well, bring it back to the shareware model.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think it depends on your age range, because I used to go and you would download the first episode of Doom or Wolfenstein or whatever, and it was free. And if you liked it, go buy the second episode.
Because so much more is about to happen.
Yeah.
I kind of know what's happening in level 3 and 4 in Doom.
I wonder if I find a key card anywhere.